There's something wrong with your food. James Whitfield had been awake since 4:30 that morning, the way men do when they've been carrying a company on their back for 35 years. He was on his second cup of coffee, reading through acquisition briefs he wouldn't have time to finish, and he almost didn't hear her. He looked up. Grace was standing in the kitchen doorway. 11 years old, small for her age, still in her school uniform. She was holding a dish towel with both hands and twisting it slowly, the way kids do when they're trying to decide whether to say the thing they came to say. He set the coffee down. "What did you say?" She stepped into the kitchen. "Just one step. The butter," she said quietly. "Don't eat the toast." James looked at his plate. 2 slices of toast, lightly buttered. Caroline had made breakfast herself this morning, which she'd been doing more often lately. "Grace." He kept his voice even. "Why would you say that?" She looked at the floor, then back at him. "Because I saw her." She'd been up late finishing a book report, the kind of thing 11-year-olds don't admit to their mothers. Sometime after midnight, she heard movement in the kitchen and thought it was James getting water. It wasn't. She had a little bottle, Grace said. White, with no label. She crushed them with a spoon, the pills, and mixed them into the butter. Then she smoothed the top so it looked normal. Like nobody touched it. James didn't move for a long time. "She's going to be my wife," he said quietly. "I know." Grace looked at him. "That's why I'm telling you. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories." He leaned back in his chair and looked at the plate. The butter had melted slightly into the bread. In 20 years of running a company, he had learned to read rooms, read faces, read the half-second delay that tells you someone is lying. He read Grace now. She wasn't lying. "Did she see you?" he asked. Grace hesitated. "Yes." "And then what?" Grace reached into her uniform pocket and placed a folded envelope on the table. It was thick. "She gave me this," Grace said. "She said it was enough for my mom to stop cleaning houses. She said to tell me it was just sleeping medicine. That it wouldn't hurt you." She paused. "She said smart girls know which secrets to keep." James looked at the envelope. Then he looked at Grace. "But you're here," he said. Grace met his eyes. "My mom says people who try to buy a child's silence aren't good people." She said it plainly. Not dramatically. The way you say a thing you've been told enough times that it's become your own. James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Eat before you go to school." Not the toast. He heard Caroline's heels on the hardwood before she appeared, a sound he used to love. She walked in fresh and unhurried, already dressed, already smiling. "You're still at the table." She poured herself coffee. "You'll be late." "Probably." He held up the slice of toast. "Have a bite first." She looked at him over the rim of her mug. "I already ate." "One bite." She laughed lightly. "James. Eat your breakfast. It's good butter," he said. "You made it yourself this morning." One bite. Something shifted in her face, a fraction of a second, gone as fast as it came. "I'm not hungry," she said, and her voice had a finality to it now. James put the toast down. "Okay," he said quietly. She studied him for a moment. Then she kissed his cheek, picked up her bag, and told him she had a meeting with the florist and she'd be home by 4. He watched her car pull out of the driveway through the kitchen window. He sat there for a long time after that. Then he picked up the toast with a napkin, sealed it in a plastic bag from the drawer, and put it in his briefcase. He walked back to the kitchen. Grace was still sitting at the small table in the corner, her book report in front of her, watching him. "You saw that," she said. She wouldn't eat it. James looked at the butter dish. "Yes," he said. "I saw." He didn't go to the office. He drove 2 miles, pulled over, and called Frank DeLuca. Frank had been James's head of security for 12 years, a quiet, thorough man in his mid-60s who had spent 20 years before that as a federal investigator. He didn't panic. He didn't speculate. He gathered. "I need the butter tested," James said. "Not just for sedatives. Everything. Beta blockers, cardiac compounds, anything that would cause cumulative damage over weeks. Frank was quiet for a second. How long has it been in the house? I don't know, James said. That's the problem. I'll have it to a private lab by noon, Frank said. What else? Kitchen security footage. Last night, midnight to 2 a.m. I want it pulled without triggering the house system. I'll do it myself tonight. A pause. James. How certain are you? James watched the traffic move past his parked car. Ordinary people going to ordinary jobs with no idea what was happening inside a nice house 2 miles away. Certain enough, he said. He watched it 3 times. 12:51 a.m. The kitchen. The small under-cabinet lights on, just enough to work by. Caroline in her silk robe, moving like she'd done this before. The white bottle from her robe pocket. The methodical crushing. The careful stirring. The smoothing of the surface with the back of the spoon, that detail, that extra second of care, was somehow the worst part. She knew exactly what she was doing. James turned off the monitor and sat in the dark security room for a long time. He was 60 years old. He had outlasted 3 recessions, 2 hostile takeovers, and 1 federal investigation that went nowhere. He had believed he was past the age of being blindsided. He'd been wrong. He thought about the moment he'd met Caroline, 14 months ago. A charity gala. She'd been sitting by herself, not performing loneliness the way people do at those events, just genuinely sitting, reading something on her phone, unconcerned with being noticed. He'd been the one to approach her. He pushed the memory away. It didn't matter now. What mattered was, who taught her to do this? Caroline returned home that afternoon and found Grace in the kitchen, as usual. She closed the distance quietly, the way she always did when she wanted something from the girl. She placed a second envelope on the counter, thicker than the first. You're doing so well, Caroline said gently. James trusts you. I trust you. That's worth something. She leaned down slightly. Your mother has worked very hard her whole life. This could change things for both of you. Permanently. Grace looked at the envelope. She didn't touch it. You said the pills would help him sleep, Grace said. That's right. Then why do you need me to keep it secret? A pause. Caroline's smile held perfectly. Because people misunderstand medicine, she said. That's all. Grace nodded slowly. Okay. Caroline straightened up, satisfied, and left the kitchen. Grace stood there a moment. Then she went to find James. That night, after Caroline had gone to bed, James sat in his study. He'd been holding the same glass of bourbon for 40 minutes without drinking it. Frank had confirmed the lab results by phone, a beta blocker compound in abnormal concentration. Long-term ingestion at those levels causes progressive cardiac decline. Undetected, it looks like stress. It looks like overwork. It looks like what happens to men who built companies from nothing and never learned to slow down. $5 million life insurance policy. Taken out 3 months ago. He opened the top drawer of his desk and took out a photograph. The 2 of them at a vineyard in Sonoma, taken 6 months ago. She was laughing at something he'd said. He remembered exactly what it was, a bad joke about wine labels. She'd laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd heard in years. He put the photograph face down and closed the drawer. There was a soft knock. Mr. Whitfield. Grace's voice from the hallway. Are you awake? Come in. She stood in the doorway in her pajamas, holding a stuffed rabbit. She looked at his face. You saw the video, didn't you? Yes. I'm sorry, she said. He looked at her, surprised. You have nothing to be sorry for. I know, but, she searched for the words, you look like it hurts. James was quiet for a moment. It does, he said. But not in the way I expected. She waited. I'm not afraid of her, he said. I'm just sorry I was wrong about who she was. He looked at the closed drawer. I'm 60 years old and I still wanted to believe someone. Grace was quiet. Then she said, my mom says wanting to trust people isn't stupid. It's just risky. He looked at the girl. 11 years old, standing in his study at midnight because she'd done the right thing and was now standing guard. Your mom sounds like a very smart woman, he said. Grace nodded. She is. She's also very tired. I know, James said. We're going to fix that. Here's what we're going to do, James said, when Grace had settled into the chair across from him. Caroline thinks you took the money and stayed quiet. We need her to keep believing that. So I pretend to be on her side. Yes. It won't be comfortable. But if she trusts you, she'll talk. She'll make phone calls. She'll say things she shouldn't say. Grace thought about this. That's not exactly lying, she said finally. It's more like not correcting her. James smiled faintly. That's a good way to put it. He placed a small device on the desk. This is a panic button. If she ever makes you feel unsafe, not just uncomfortable, but actually afraid, you press this. My security team responds within 4 minutes, and the police get called automatically. Grace picked it up. Have you used one before? No, James said. But I've never needed to. She looked at the button. Tonight she came in while you were in your study. She asked me what time you went to bed. And what you ate for dinner. James's jaw tightened. She's learning my schedule. Yes, Grace said. She was very casual about it. Like she was just making conversation. She's good at that, James said quietly. Very good. Grace set the panic button on her knee. What happens if she finds out we know? Then we accelerate. But we're not there yet. He leaned forward. Right now, our advantage is that she thinks she's the only one who knows what's really happening in this house. But she's not. No, James said. She's not. 3 days later, Frank brought him a name. Robert Shaw. James read the name twice. He set the paper down carefully, the way you set something down when your hands might not be steady. Shaw, he said. Shell company called Pacific Advisory Partners, Frank said. No real office, no employees, but money has been moving through it for 6 months. Into her accounts. Significant money. Robert Shaw and I built a company together, James said. 19 years ago. I bought him out. He paused. He thought I was being generous. He thought he was walking away with a good settlement. What he didn't know is that I'd seen where the industry was going. 2 years later, the company was worth 40 times what I paid him for his share. Frank nodded slowly. So he's been waiting. For a long time. James stood up and walked to the window. He knows my company's structure better than most of my current board. He knows the succession rules. He knows the insurance arrangements. He knows exactly what happens to control of the shares if I die suddenly. It's a takeover, Frank said. Dressed as a murder. James turned back to the room. Yes. And the genius of it, the only part I'll give him, is that there's no fingerprints. By the time anyone found anything, it would have looked like I worked myself into an early grave. Caroline inherits. Within a year, Shaw's fingerprints are on everything through her. Frank crossed his arms. What do you want to do? I want all of it on record, James said. Both of them. I want evidence so clean there's no room for a lawyer to work. That means giving her more rope, Frank said. Yes, James said. It does. James began to perform illness. It was a particular kind of acting, not theatrical, not overdone. He had sat across from enough dishonest people in his career to know that the best lies were the ones that barely looked like anything. He ate slower. He gripped the back of chairs. He pressed his fingers lightly to his sternum once or twice at breakfast, as if something there was bothering him. Caroline noticed everything. On the third morning, she came down with a small prescription bottle she'd never mentioned before. The doctor called, she told Grace while James sat at the table, eyes half open. James needs extra support for his heart right now. Starting today, 2 of these go in his juice every morning. They dissolve quickly, he won't even taste them. She demonstrated. 2 pills into orange juice. A quiet fizz. Gone. Yes, ma'am, Grace said. James raised the glass. Paused. Can you grab my phone? I think I left it in the den. Caroline left the room. James stood up, walked to the sink, poured the juice, rinsed the glass, refilled it from the carton. Sat back down. Drank the clean juice in 3 slow swallows as Caroline returned. Better, he said, setting the glass down. She watched him. Something bright and careful moved through her eyes. Good, she said softly. That afternoon, Caroline stepped outside to take a phone call. James watched from the upstairs window until she moved to the far corner of the garden, her spot, away from the house. He took the back stairs, moved through the side door, and crossed the garden along the hedge line. He was in his stockings. He hadn't worn stockings in the garden since he was a child. He could hear her voice from 15 feet. He went to the doctor, she said. They think it's cardiac. He's getting weaker. It's working. A pause. No, we can't rush it. If it happens too fast, there are questions. Heart disease at 60 is believable, you just need the right timeline. Another few weeks. Another pause. The insurance is secondary. It's the company. Once we're married, I have enough standing to freeze major decisions until control transfers. Robert, you know the structure better than I do. You wrote the contingency clauses. The voice on the other end was faint but audible. James recognized it. He stood behind the hedge until the call ended. Then he walked back through the side door, up the back stairs, and into his study. He sat down behind his desk and placed both hands flat on the surface. He was not angry. He was past anger. He picked up his phone and called Frank. Get the cameras in the kitchen, he said. Audio too. We're moving to the final phase. I've been thinking about what happens if something happens to me, James told Caroline at dinner, 3 days later. She looked up from her plate. I want to talk to someone who understands the company, James continued. Someone outside my current board, someone I used to trust. I was thinking about Robert Shaw. The pause was almost invisible. Shaw, she repeated. I thought you two had a falling out. We did. But he's the only person outside the company who understands how it's structured. If you ever needed advice, James let that sit for a moment, I'd feel better if you had someone who knows the landscape. That's thoughtful, she said carefully. I can reach out to him if you'd like. I already called him, James said. He's coming for dinner tomorrow night. Something moved across her face, too fast to name. Then she smiled. Of course, she said. I'll ask Helen to prepare something nice. Robert Shaw arrived at 7. He was taller than James remembered. Grayer. He wore the easy confidence of a man who had spent 19 years telling himself he deserved more than he got. He shook James's hand warmly. You don't look well, James. I know, James said. That's actually why I called you. They sat at the dining table. Caroline poured the wine. Grace moved quietly through the kitchen, visible through the pass-through. Frank and 2 police detectives sat in the security room 20 feet away, watching the camera feed on a laptop. Dinner moved slowly. Robert was careful. Caroline was careful. James was the only one who wasn't. After 20 minutes, he put down his fork. I want to talk about what happens to the company when I die, he said. Robert set down his wine glass. James. I know about Pacific Advisory Partners, James said. I know about the insurance policy. I know about the beta blockers in my butter. He looked at Caroline. I know about the phone call in the garden on Tuesday afternoon, when you told Robert we needed another few weeks. The room went completely still. Robert's face went blank, the professional blank of a man accustomed to composure. Caroline's hand stopped moving. Daniel, Caroline started. James, he corrected quietly. She stared at him. He pressed the button on the small remote in his pocket. Caroline's voice filled the dining room from a speaker above the doorway. He drank it this morning. The girl is doing exactly what we need. He's getting weaker. A few more weeks. Then Robert's voice, once he's gone, the company transfers to your control. We move the shares, liquidate what we need, and we're done. The recording ended. James looked at both of them. Dinner is over, he said. The door to the hallway opened. Frank walked in with detectives Carol Perez and Marcus Webb. Caroline stood. Her chair scraped back hard. James, please. Please listen to me. I can explain this. The medication, I was trying to help you. You work too hard, you never sleep, you were going to have a heart attack, James said. Yes. You were going to make sure of it. That's not Caroline. His voice was very quiet. I watched the footage. I know what you did. I heard what you said. She looked at him for a long moment. And then something in her changed. The warmth, the worry, the softness, all of it fell away at once, like a coat she'd been too warm in anyway. Do you know what I gave up for this? She said, her voice low. 14 months. 14 months of early mornings and late nights and watching you work through every dinner we ever had together. Listening to you talk about the company like it was a person. Like it mattered more than anything living. It wasn't personal, James. You were lonely. Men like you always are. You have everything and no one to hand it to when you're gone. I just gave you what you were already looking for. You gave me poison, he said. She looked at him one last time, not with hatred, exactly, but with the frank appraisal of someone who has stopped pretending. I gave you exactly what you wanted, she said. Someone who seemed to understand you. You should be more careful about what you want. Detective Perez stepped forward. Ms. Ashford. Turn around, please. Caroline turned. Robert didn't resist. He looked at James as the cuffs went on, and said, quietly, without drama, you always were better at the long game than me. Yes, James said. I was. If this story has you on the edge of your seat right now, drop "I'm still here" in the comments. Let's see who is riding this all the way to the end. They were let out. The front door closed. Grace was standing in the kitchen doorway. James looked at her for a long moment. She had her rabbit in both hands. Is she coming back? Grace asked. No. Grace nodded. She looked toward the front door, then back at him. Are you okay? I will be. He walked to the kitchen table and sat down. Come sit with me for a minute. She sat across from him. The kitchen was quiet, the ordinary kind of quiet, not the kind that's hiding something. You could have kept the money, James said. I know. It was a lot of money. I know that too. So why didn't you? Grace thought about it. Because she tried to use me, she said finally. And I didn't want to be used. Even for something good. She paused. My mom works really hard. I know we need things. But if I took that money, I would have known forever what I traded for it. James looked at her. How old are you? 11. You're going to be all right, he said. More than all right. The house on Maplewood Drive had a blue front door and a porch with 2 rocking chairs that never quite matched. James parked on the street, walked up the path, and knocked. Grace opened the door before his hand dropped. You're early, she said. I got out of a meeting, he said. Which I never do. Helen came out of the kitchen, drying her hands, still not quite used to the fact that the house was hers. You didn't have to come all the way over here. I wanted to, he said. And he meant it. He sat at the kitchen table, small, slightly uneven, with a scratch on the corner that someone had tried to fill with wood putty. He'd sat at longer tables in better rooms. He felt more settled here. Grace poured 3 glasses of lemonade and sat across from him, the way she always did now. How's school? He asked. The teacher wants me to skip a grade. She made a face. I said I'd think about it. What's there to think about? I'd have to leave my friends. She shrugged. Some things matter more than being ahead. James looked at her. 11 years old, and she already understood the thing it took him 40 years to learn. He looked out the window at the quiet street. Robert Shaw was in federal custody. Caroline Ashford was facing conspiracy and attempted murder charges. His company was stable. His board was whole. He was alive. Mr. Whitfield, Grace said. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't said anything? He considered the question seriously. Yes, he said. Does it scare you? What scares me is how close it was, he said. Not the poison. The fact that she almost had me. 14 months, and I almost let myself be convinced that someone was looking out for me. He looked at the table. At my age, you start to think you're past being fooled. You weren't fooled, Grace said. I almost was. But you weren't, she said again. Simply. Like it was settled. He smiled. It was real, not the measured kind he wore at board meetings, not the polished kind from charity galas. Just a real smile, sitting in a small kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon. Helen set a plate of cookies on the table. Nobody said anything for a while. The afternoon light came through the window over the sink and fell across the table at an angle. James stayed for an hour longer than he'd planned. He drove home on surface streets instead of the highway, which he never did. The most dangerous place, he'd learned, was not a boardroom with enemies or a courtroom with lawyers. It was a breakfast table with someone who knew exactly when you woke up, what you liked, and how much you wanted to believe they loved you. And the person who saves your life is not always a doctor, a lawyer, or a bodyguard. Sometimes it's an 11-year-old girl who decides that some things aren't for sale. Now I want to hear from you. Grace was 11 years old with nothing to gain and everything to risk, and she still chose to do the right thing. Would you have done the same? Or would the money have been too hard to walk away from? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know who is sitting at a table right now trusting the wrong person. And if you are new here, welcome to Hill Tales Stories. Every story we tell is about one thing: what happens when people finally get exactly what they deserve. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. Until next time, remember. The most dangerous betrayal always comes with a smile. Stay wise. And take care of each other.